many countries, when they started to industrialize, had an advantage over other poor countries because they had access to free, comparably free, available fossil fuels. This were mainly the US, European countries, and later on Japan. Because energy was there, and it was comparably cheap and available energy, it was easy to industrialize, to create wealth, growth, industrialization. That was linked to CO2 emissions. This was basically in the 18th century when industrialization started. At this point in time, no one knew that CO2 is harmful for the climate. People even probably didn't know what a climate system is. Yeah? But fact is, that's what we know today, or since a couple of decades, is that carbon dioxide emitted in the atmosphere stays there for up to 1,000 years and longer. 40% of that fraction is a huge fraction. So ignorance doesn't prevent from responsibility, right? Of course you didn't know that one, and no one keeps you guilty in legal terms, but there's a responsibility by the rich nations to acknowledge we got rich because we had cheap energy for quite some time, and now suddenly other countries aspire to the same wealth based on the same resources available for them, and everyone is saying, no, you can't, because we have already polluted the climate so much we need to stay below 2 degrees. That's just like saying a little bit like, a couple of rich people sit together and eat the starters and eat the main dish, and then for the dessert they realize, oh my goodness, we have a couple of poor beggars out there, let's invite them and share the dessert with them, right? And that's the same thing, Again, not legally a case, but morally a case. So now, if you put this in context and look at the carbon budget, which is pretty well assessed by scientists, what is available to be emitted by all countries in order not to exceed 2 degrees, and what includes, of course, the historic emissions, because the atmosphere is loaded already with a certain amount of carbon emissions. And you distribute that one equally and take account historic responsibility, but also capacity, because rich countries can do more than poorer countries. Then you come to the point that rich countries are not doing enough. Their climate pledges for Paris are by no means sufficient to cover their historic responsibility, but also their economic capacity. I find it perverse that 85 people on the world have as much wealth as almost the poorest half of the global population, 350 billion people. It tells me we have the money, and very often it comes to the point that those richer people, not just the 85 people, but let's say the richest 20% of the world population, are at the same time those who cause the highest emissions because of their consumption and lifestyles, because of their ownership of gasoline cars, of their travel behavior, of their big houses, of the equipment they have in the houses, etc., etc. So there's a direct link between being rich, overly rich, and causing emissions. What we need to do is we need to decouple basically income growth, sustainable lifestyles from emissions growth. I think we believe that can be done. WWF is standing for 100% renewables development. Not that they will solve all problems, but they solve a couple of problems, including emissions reductions and reliable, affordable, and clean energy for the poor.